My presentation today is enabling micro-entrepreneurship in agriculture and introducing a VGRO technology. Okay. The picture there was shot yesterday morning somewhere near Kadalur, Viluppuram area. A very young entrepreneur who just started doing with VGRO. And you can see the enthusiasm with that person. So that's exactly the banner in which I'm going to start. But before that, I want to thank ABN, Mr. Tariq, Mr. Gopi. It rapidly evolved. 3 or 4 days back, we spoke, and I didn't expect that I would be presenting before a learned group like this in a very short span. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thanks, Dr. Manivanan, for the nice introduction. I think you're one person who are following me right from 96.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yes, I left Viluppuram to go and join in Annamalai, and from there I've gone a long way. But I know Dr. Manivanan, and he was one person who has followed me to see me where I am and how I am doing in a couple of continents. So nothing more than a reference like Dr. Manivanan who has seen me elsewhere. And thanks, Mr. Gopi, you highlighted what I was doing earlier. At some point, it stuck to me that we got to give something back to the community. How do you bring it back to people who are in need of it? Been in corporate for 20, 22 years. It's been a long way. Most of you on this call know how it is in corporate climbing the ladder. At some point, I felt like, okay, this is enough. There's more 10 years of active life left. Can we do something back to the community? And that's where all prompted, and that's where we started VGRO and Farm AI. Um, Unfortunately or fortunately, it was a COVID year. It was a wrong time to start a company, I would honestly say that. But these challenges also made us quite strong. And some of you on this call know me for a long time. Like Ilavarasan knows me from the day I started my career. He was working for a competitor, and we are good friends. And I haven't scrolled through the list of participants. If I don't call your name, pardon me, but definitely I will work with Mr. Tariq to see who are all I know. I've been away for 20 years from Tamil Nadu and from India for 15 years, and it's kind of a homecoming for me. The last 1 year, I spent more time than what I would have been done in the last 20 years. So that's a little bit of my background. It's basically how do you bring smiles to smallholder farmers? How can you make their lives better? And I wanted to be clear, I'm not here as a government agency or an NGO. I'm here to make a little bit of money because I got to pay people, got to run company. But if the profits of the farmers are more, they are smart enough to come back to you. And that's exactly my pretext with this presentation. I'm not sure the demographic profile of people who joined. We can take questions in Tamil, Hindi, Malayalam, and Mandarin. I will be presenting in English. Some of my slides are not acclimatized to English. It has Tamil, but I promise that in a couple of days, I would get it all neutral in English for everybody to read. With that, thank you very much for the time. Organizers, please stop me if there is a question or any housekeeping.
Subash,
Yeah.
we need to mention note of thanks to Dr. Padmanabhan, who has been silently working towards making this program a good, successful event today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bhatta. We both are classmates. And, thank you very much. I take it granted. I don't want to thank you formally. But yes, thanks, Dr. Bhatta. Thanks, Dr. Tariq, for reminding me on that. Today's presentation, it's going to be like 50% I'm going to share some thoughts, and 50% is more around the VGRO technology. So it's a balance of you guys take home some information that might prompt you for the next thoughts. So quickly on the setting the context, we're going to speak on evolution of agriculture. I'll be touching few macro views. It's not comprehensive, but it links between global and India and how these macro views are changing productivity and sustainability in India. Okay. And then we move on to micro entrepreneurship opportunity, why it's so. And I'm using rice ecosystem as an example. You know, the agriculture is vast. and there's several crops, 53 odd crops that we can work on. But having the focus right and making the biggest impact is where the company is focused on. And we are looking at VGRO technology and potential in India. So this is the scope of the presentation. I'll pass for question and answers. I'll take as much as question and answers. In case you can also type in as requested by the organizers onto the chat box as it comes. First, the macro view. Where is agriculture globally and in India looks like? So, if you look at this slide, evolution of agriculture, actually, agriculture started when Homo sapiens or human beings stopped becoming hunter gatherers. We, at some point in our evolution, were basically hunting animals and gathering fruits or vegetables or underground tubers from forest. Agriculture started back in 8000 BC, before Christ, when we started kind of domesticating crops, etc. From there on, it has gone a long way. A long way, I mean, it's been significantly a long way. And it has provided ample scope for evolution century after century. Even this is not sufficient. And that's what you're going to see in the next few 15 to 20 minutes on what's needed to take it to the next level. Okay. This is a slide that's coming from a couple of data from FAO and others. So what it shows is percentage of GDP in agriculture. Put it simply, we took the five largest continents or countries that are contributing to agriculture, and you will notice India is contributing roughly around 15.9% of GDP on agriculture. Indian GDP is somewhere around 2.5 trillion US dollar compared to a global GDP of 83 trillion. Whereas you look at USA, well advanced agriculture, roughly a $20 billion ag market in seeds alone, is contributing only to 2.5% of the GDP. There are two reasons for it. It's primarily because in those developed countries, the service sector and industries have evolved rapidly and they're contributing a lot to GDP. Whereas if you look at the case of India, we still have 50% of our workforce, 50% of our population, which are predominantly engaged in agriculture, marginal, substantial, or even bigger form of agriculture. So that's something which we wanted to start with. So why this is an importance, why smallholder folding farmers are important, why an agriculture that works in a continent like US doesn't work in a place like India. The next slide primarily gives you a further insight into it. If you look here, this is the farm type, small, medium, and large. The legends, I would go through the legends first for you guys to understand. Then farm power, which is basically the machineries that are used. So the tractors in India are small, or even it's a single axle power tillers behind which people walk behind it. That's called as low, medium, and high. High are like very heavy tractors. That's quite huge. Machine types, different types of intercultural operations, few to moderate to many, and the level of precision farming, low, medium, and high. In my previous job, I have seen farms that are 20,000 hectares, single ownership, 20,000 hectares. In their lifetime, the person wouldn't have seen the entire farm, but he is making one of the best agricultures in the world using satellites to sensors to GPS to drones. Can we get it to a 2.5 acre farmer in India? No, we don't have a business case. So how do you get it to people here who are not having that big land holdings? And if you look at a little bit of diversity in this, you see here in Europe, it has the entire spectrum of farms. Very small farms in Italy, which is like somewhere in India, Vietnam, to large farms which are 200 acres and 300 acres like US, and even big farms like 1,000 acres. And if you notice in Brazil, Brazil has around 5,000 acre farms on an average, huge farms. So what this mean is the nuances of how agriculture is looked at is different in different countries, different in different states, different in different crops. So that's demands us to look slightly different. And this is something after 10 years of roaming around and looking at different continents, it gives you a kind of a pivotal view on what it takes to get there. So the point here is very simple. In India, GDP there's the highest contribution of GDP coming from agriculture, which is 15.9% compared to any other countries in the world. Number two, 50% of a population dependent on agriculture for livelihood. And if you look at the circled round, our farms are smallholder farms. We have very low mechanization. We have moderate amount of equipments on the field, and our precision farming is as low. I will actually use an analog here. I came all the way and created a company by name Farm AI, and some people call Farm I. I did had struggle with Indian company registrations to give me Farm AI. Farm AI. It's Farm Artificial Intelligence. Short form is Farm AI, and we have to go and tell them it's Farm I and it's Japanese. And what it does is I give you a bit of intelligence, and you will gain a lot of money. And you know what? When in markets like India, if you say I'm going to give you something intangible, nobody pays for it. Huh? Whereas I say like, okay, I give you a bag of something that helps to increase your yield by 15%, people will look in. So that's still the mindset and the behavioral pattern of farmers out there. So that's an important note that you guys got to look in when you get into the later part of this presentation. Um, Most of you are aware of the sustainable goals led by UN. This is the 2015 when a group of all countries met and they wanted to eradicate hunger by 2030, etc., etc. Highly paid diplomats speaking on each countries. You know what? The reality check after 5 years. How close are we reaching in to reach that objective globally? The FAO statistics says that 800 million worldwide would suffer from hunger. We got to produce 70% more food by 2050. I repeat, 70% more food. And the most interesting thing is the agriculture share of global GDP. It shrunk from 3%, it shrunk to 3% from 9% a decade ago. You understand, like 10 years back, global agriculture was contributing to 9% of the global GDP, whereas today it is 3% of the global GDP. And actually what is happening there is there isn't any really innovation or disruption that has taken place. If you look at the mobile telephony markets 2007 and now, it's completely different. If you look at the pharma, I'm a molecular geneticist by training. In my master's, worked for the significant time in DNA, manipulating DNA, diagnostics, etc. And that's what you call now as COVID testing for presence of COVID-19 pathogen or not. And now, of course, you see two companies from US, which is Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna giving an mRNA vaccine. That vaccine took less than 1 year to develop. And if you have to go back in time and look at mumps or tetanus vaccines that took close to 25, 30 years to develop. So that's how the technology compression has happened in pharma. And like I said about the telephony and 5G and 4Gs, it's less than 10 years. You look at agriculture, well, the contribution to GDP, the shrinking in contribution to GDP shows exactly how much innovation has gone in. We are still cranking the wheel again and again, season after season. And if it's a good year, monsoons, thank God everything works, we get good yield. Otherwise, we kind of go for politicians to give us grants and insurance covers. So that's a point that you got to keep on sustainability. This is an interesting thing I came across. That's called as AIOR, Agriculture Investment Orientation Ratio. And these are all coming from FAO and United Nations. I will add the source for those who want to read more when I circulate this slide through Mr. Tariq. So if you look at the developed economies, the ratios have been constantly more than one. So it's a kind of a formula that uses how much is the GDP, how much agriculture contributes to the GDP, how much is the public spending in research and extension to develop agriculture. On the right side, you see developing economies like Africa, India, and other countries. It's been at 0.4. There's clearly 60% underinvestments in agriculture for past decades. And this actually signifies why you can see the GDP contributions have shrunk down. These are slightly big macroeconomic pictures to set the context. And my later part of the presentation will take you down to understand exactly what at micro level it looks like. Okay. Moving on. This is quite interesting. From 91, 92 to 2050, how much the labor force in agriculture is shrinking. So we would, was 60 when I started my college days, and it's today at 40%. So 20%, which is one third less labor force in agriculture. And maybe another 20 years or 30 years from now, we would be even half of it, which is 26%. We still got to grow. We still have to produce food. We still have livelihoods based on farm. So the way you got to do agriculture is going to be slightly different moving forward. And this is a quite interesting trend. It's again coming from FAO statistics, where the employment trend shift. If you look at the same 91, 92, there was 63% engaged in agriculture, which has fallen down to 47% as of 2014, 2015. You can see the service sectors and the industries expanding a lot, and that will continue to expand. And that's also reflected in the GDP contribution from different sectors compared to agriculture. And if this trend comes, what you will have is a huge shortage of labor. I will talk about this a little bit when I go to the second half of the presentation, where you will see how labor shortage is making it difficult for people to work. In terms of India, this is a quite interesting figure. One comes from UN estimates on the left side. We would be 1.6 billion, crossing China in terms of population by 2030. And the food production is on the right side. That's an ICR Vision 2030, where would be. Two messages for you guys to take home. The population CAGR from 91 to 2030 grows at 2% year on year, compounded annual growth rate. Whereas on the right side, if you look at the production of food grains, the demand has to grow at 3%. So there is a complete skewness here. Your population is growing at 2% constantly. Your demand is growing 3% every year, and it's not on par. And you still have a gap that is widening significantly as we move on. So this again puts more pressure on how we produce sustainably, how we make farms profitable, etc. And this would be another interesting thing, where how urbanization in India happens. So if you look at 1960s, when we had 500,000,000 population, 82% of the population was in rural India. And if you look at 2018, we have 1.35 billion in population, and 66% of them are in rural. So which means a drop in rural population as we grow bigger and bigger. And that's very clear. People prefer no more like backbreaking jobs in frying sunlight. They wanted to go to factories, they wanted to go to industries, they wanted to go out of villages to work. So all these demographic changes are again putting pressure on where we are in terms of agriculture per se. And you guys all know this Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Scheme. இல்லைன்னா தமிழில் வந்து 100 நாள் வேலை வாய்ப்புன்னுவாங்க. So this is very popular, and you know it's a very great social initiative. It's providing money, taxpayers' money into pockets of the bottommost section of the society, which is a fantastic one. 100 days and 150 rupees. Now they're talking about 200 rupees per day. But don't take me wrong, it's exactly competing on the farm force, which is on the right side, that used to work in farmlands. Okay. So I grew up in Viluppuram, but my grandfather is from Arni, which is near Vellore, Thiruvannamalai district. And in my childhood days in the 70s and 80s, I used to go to the farm, and the planting used to start at morning 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. You know, most of the places where the planting starts today, it starts at 4 p.m. in the evening. Why? Because morning you get that 100-day work program from MGNREGA, and then after that they go take a rest, and 4 to 6 is where the planting happens today in agriculture. Now this 100 days is going to become 150 days. Okay, they are going to pay from 150 to 210 or 220, something like that. I need to update myself. So which is good for the individuals who benefit from it, but it is going to be at the cost of availability of farm labors. So that's a point, a message which has to be taken in a more a macro perspective and not to be seen as cynical. They benefit, but they benefit at the cost of something else. Okay. And this is a quick snapshot. This comes from a PwC PricewaterhouseCoopers paper on mechanization in India. You will see different crops. One thing good is India is the largest tractor manufacturer and exporter in the world. The thing that has happened very rapidly is the single wheel tractors. நம்ம வந்து power tiller we walk behind, that one has grown significantly, largest in the world and in Asia, then followed by big tractors, where we are the largest exporters of tractors and manufacturers of the tractors. So field preparation is mechanized. But there is a clear imbalance, when you go for sowing, planting, and transplanting, except for a couple of crops where there is seed drills, the transplanted crops or crops that are a little bit difficult to plant still has a big gap. So a chain is as strong as the weakest link. So you have mechanization, 100% is today machine harvested. You need a machine to harvest your field. And but you have achieved significant levels of mechanization in certain sections of crop activity, but there still exists a big gap. That would be my message. So the blue ones are high level of mechanization, less labor dependent. Moderate ones are 50-50 or 30-50. Low ones are really need attention. There isn't any mechanization so far. And you can see paddy planting, only 5%. This is a 2018 data, is mechanized. Whereas you look at cotton harvesting, we still have child labor problems in it, where small kids are used to pick up bowls of cotton in Maharashtra and Nanded areas. So it's quite imbalanced. If all this becomes blue, obviously that's where the right spot that we got to be in terms of meeting labor and urbanization demands. And so, to summarize, the development's challenging legacy models, the way we used to operate. Farming used to be a way of life. It's no more a way of life. It's kind of evolving into more than way of life. And people are like, changing demographics, which is primarily different age groups. New generation doesn't want to work in farm. They want to go to an industry or a service nearby in towns and settle down. Labor shortage by other government welfare schemes or from other alternate employments. Water, luckily, the next 2 years are going to be good rain because of very good monsoons last year. But prior to that 4 years, there has been always a demand for water, which was lower. Climate change, we all know this very well. And how do you improve productivity and sustainability? Most of the productivity gains in the short term is going to come from reducing losses. How you can limit losses to make that happen. So that's exactly where the productivity point will come in. And sustainable, if you do something one season and you are not able to replicate season after season, this is not going to be sustainable. And that's a big challenge of any technology introductions that you bring in. The technology has to be simple, it has to be making sense to the people, it has its own legs to run or walk, and then people should feel like, okay, I got better using this technology. So that's something there. And fragmented holdings and smallholder farms, this is something that where it can be solved only by micro entrepreneurship. If you look at US, 20% of the farms are roughly 2,000 acres each. 2,000 acres, 20% of the farms. There, it is not a farm, it's a factory, or it's a small scale industry or a large scale industry. Millions of dollars goes through and comes out. Whereas you will see some slides later, our average farm is roughly around 0.6 hectare or acre or acre and a half is where the average is, and how you can bring technologies there. And that leads to the next point, which is lack of scale economies. So you don't get scale economics because of small holdings, very diverse. If you look at a 50-acre area in your village, two of the guys will be planting 5 days before, three of the guys will be planting 3 days later, another farm will be planting 10 days later. So that's a little bit of a big challenge in our markets that we work on. So this is the summary of overall view of where we are in terms of macroeconomic picture. To recap, the demographics, shortage of labor, and the nuances of small farms and technology deployment will define how agriculture is. I didn't touch much into the digitization, drone, or agriculture 4.0 because that's a separate topic on its own. It needs an in-depth drill down on several technologies, right from use of satellite remote sensing to drone-based surveys, drone-based sprays, as well as IoT sensors and management information through digital products enabling farmers. Probably I'll reserve it in the future date if there's an opportunity with this team. But I wanted to clearly emphasize the basics first. Get the basics right, then we can move to the second and third step where we want to get it right. So that's my introduction. I can pause for a minute for a quick check with organizers. Is it good to go to the next second half of the presentation?
Yes, Subash, please. It's quite
Okay.
interesting.
Yeah, thank you. So now I'm moving from preaching to sales pitch. Let me be honest on it. Um, we are talking about VGRO. So VGRO, I forgot to put the tag there. It's in my T-shirt. Grow with VGRO. That's the English trademark. Tamil VGRO உடன் வளர்வோம். We have the same taglines trademarked in different languages also. So the inspiration for VGRO is very simple. An average farmer, if he wants to raise a nursery or a technology like a person, a doctorate or a PhD from an agriculture college, it's not possible. Either the technology is too intensive or it's complex. How can you make it very user friendly and simple for anyone to use? Be it an uneducated farmer to a woman or a very old person, how can you get it back? So that's the inspiration for us in that VGRO. So V stands for VWE, GRO stands for GROW, a short form of grow is grow, GRO. And that's where the inspiration came for us. And I'm going to talk about the ecosystem, challenges and opportunities. And I'm focusing very much on wetland rice. And you will know why I'm focusing on wetland rice. So though there are a lot of cash crops, and Dr. Manivanan would love to see horticulture crops, which is later in our pipeline. But today's presentation would be more around wetland rice ecosystem. So once I came out of US, this is where I have been roaming around my 2020 timeline. So a total of 45,000 kilometers traversed in Tamil Nadu and southern part of Andhra. And we have VGRO in close to 10,000 acres of farms. That's roughly 3,000 farmers benefited it, and there is more than 92% of returning customers. I have been very much under the cover. I normally used to be very connected on LinkedIn and vocal in several forums. Last year has been an hiatus, partly due to COVID. I cannot travel much, but also it provided me a lot of opportunity to be closer to the customer to understand the needs. And those histograms or customer visits, travel distances to know exactly what it is. So some of the slides that I'm going to present here is a synthesis of a product's performance, and also the experience that we learned. I mean, the farmers, the transplanters, the entrepreneurs who learned through a difficult year like 2020, and how this sets the stage for the coming seasons. So that's exactly where I'm going in. And that's actually a lot of kilometers in a COVID year when more than 6 months of the country was shut down in India. So, well, with that, I wanted to move a little bit of a prompt to you guys on landholding patterns and snapshot. So if you look at the landholding pattern in India, less than 2 hectare of farm size accounts for 86.2%. 2 hectare is roughly 405 acres. Okay, this is small and marginal farmers, a staggering 126 million. This is across every crop. And there is 47% of arable land, or 74 million hectares, averaging 0.6 hectares in the farm size. And if you look at the medium and the big farms, which is 2 to 10 hectares, roughly around 4 to 25 acres, that's something around 13.2% of all farms. This average is halving every 2 to 4 decades because of division of property between heirs and getting smaller and smaller. This poses an enormous challenge for government extension that aims to reach with relevant technology. So if you want to take a technology to small farms, well, if you have a cousins of four, two of them will agree and two of them will not agree. The previous generation, four of them would be with one person, and it would be easy to convince someone. So this is going to get complicated. And we got to live in India with the smallholder farms and devise ways to bring scale and economic viability. Otherwise, many farms will kind of vanish. And you see all this flag bearers talking about farm vanishing, etc. Yes, there is a lot of challenge in agriculture, but the challenge is also partly invented by us. This is Tamil Nadu area and productivity by district. The data is coming from 2018 from Department of Statistics. So this is to highlight the opportunity that we have before us, and particularly why VGRO plays a key role in enabling this. So roughly 4.5 million acres per annum is the total planted rice acreage. That's 3 seasons, or an average of cumulative of 3 seasons across all the districts. The histograms what you see are different districts. From It's mostly Delta, the first three districts in Delta. Then you have Villupuram, Tiruvannamalai, and then it goes down the tail all the way to Nilgiris. You can see like on an average, 4.5 lakhs acre is planted every year in the topmost district, and that's somewhere around 45 lakh acres. And the productivity is very interesting. If you look at the productivity is only 1.7 tons per acre. These are varieties that have higher background in international rice research, blood or genetics. On an average, this gives an yield of around 3 tons to 3.2 tons. Whereas you can see our yield far lower, 30 to 40% lower than the lowest yields in Indonesia or Philippines for similar conditions. And in terms, if you talk about bags, it's 22 bags, 20 bags and 22 bags of 75 kg is what we get. And you see a lot of variation. So if you have been in genetics and you are doing yield component, there are several components that play to the yield. In addition, management, how do you manage your crop? And then the environment, the weather. So three of those which contribute. Any increase of 10 to 15% by reducing certain waste or things that are not good would help farmers to go ahead very comfortably. Okay, so if you look at here, which is primarily on the screen where you see the rice planting manual versus mechanized. I showed you about farm mechanization in India. The penetration is only 5%. We have labor shortage. We have many problems associated with it. And on the other side, you see manual planting. And I recently met somebody near Dindivanam, a family of four, and they all in the weekends were planting their field, 2 acres of field. And they are all working as in small factories around the place. You ask them why, they say they don't get labor to plant the field anymore. If they want to cultivate, they have to plant on their own as a family exercise, and this is not going to be sustainable. So that's a big opportunity. And you might ask, like, there are other technologies you can bring, satellites, drones, and etc., etc. I strongly believe let's get the foundations right first. If you get the foundation right, you can put anything on top of it. And don't get offended. There's a saying in English called putting lipstick on the pig. If you don't get a good baseline, whatever you work on top of it, it's not going to help you to go there. So that's a big challenge that we have. And that's where VGRO is focused more on getting the first 25 days of fundamentals right. So if you look here, which is primarily here, that is the VGRO, where VGRO is operating. Enabling the right foundation for a good start, 15 to 20% increased yield, same practice for farmers. You're not drastically changing farmer practices. You are just enabling them to switch to a technology that gives them 15% more yield without any much additional efforts. And this has been a welcome initiative across the farming community that we have worked. Somebody called me up from south of Tamil Nadu and asked, I'm still learning the different accent and local nuances of the language, but basically he got 24 bags of the same variety planted on one side, and he got around 32 bags of the same variety planted on the other side with VGRO. No difference in package of practices. It's just the technology that has been incorporated in that helps the farmer to get. So that's exactly where it is getting right from start. So you have a good start, maybe 2 years, 3 years. When the farmer graduates, we can bring in a lot of satellite-based imagery or advanced analytics that is quite common in the developed world. There is also a big now I think Balamurugan planted it. I'm sure I'll let him explain how was his experience during the Q&A. The biggest challenge for machine adoption is farmers want the field to be completely green. नट्टा पच्चया இருக்கணும் सब green दिखने वाला है plant करने के बाद, and that's the expectation, and that comes from planting a 35-day-old seedling in manual planting. Because when human beings are plucking, the ladies are plucking and planting it, they need a longer plant for their hands to comfortably pluck. Say for example, the short duration varieties that we grow, which are 110 days, 120 days. In 110 days and 120 days, if you have 35 days in the nursery, how much time you give the plant to grow? And this is a serious thought, and I personally have a lot of challenges to explain to farmers when we meet. Look, 1/3 of the time is lost in the nursery, and then you go and plant, and then you come and say, like, I did only 17 bags, I did only 18 bags. So what this does is the machine transplanting is getting popularized. The problem with machine transplanting is, though the Japanese invented machine transplanting for planting using what you call as media. Now நம்ம வந்து சுலபமா என்ன பண்ணோம், அந்த சேரியை அள்ளி போட்டு put the same soil and started growing it because it was available without no cost. But then when you pluck and plant it, when the machine plucks and plant it, it creates a root damage. So there's a shock. When you cut something, you have to allow it to grow or recuperate and then start. So you lose another 10 days. So these are certain problems associated which VGRO solves. I will go into certain details in the next few slides on how this technology is helping to increase the yield, so you will be able to understand that. So if you look at here, primarily improved germination and vigor. Those are pictures from taken at farmer's field. You have 4x root growth, which is predominantly Western class seedling mats in the market, uniform growth, and strong seedlings. So it's basically these kind of things help to establish a very good start to the crop. And seedling mats without stones and debris. When machine is planting, you have a stone coming in between the rotary case. You then break the needle that is planting, because machine is not like human beings. It doesn't have the sixth sense to stop when there is a stone. Then you get a failure in the machine, and then the day's planting is stopped. These are issues that have stopped mechanization. Our VGRO technology provides mats that are without stones, that are without any debris, so that you ensure very smooth planting. And seedling mats weigh only 1.25 kg. So if you look at machines running in muddy places or swampy areas, the life of the machine is significantly down than those running on highways. And here, when you use soil to make the VGRO mat, it's around 6 kg, and you put around 60 kg onto a machine which is only a plastic board, and then push it inside a muddy puddled rice field, wetland, swampy rice field, and make it work. The machine gets to depreciate faster. Whereas using VGRO, it's only 1 kilogram, 1.2 kilograms, and it's not more than 12 to 13 kilograms. It nicely glides on the float while planting. And you can plant in 15 to 17 days. So when you plant at 15 to 17 days and without any shock, what it happens is you have more time for the plants to grow and produce and give better yield. That's exactly where the technology play comes in behind VGRO. And but if you go to places like Kurunjipadi and all, they will be planting 140 acres, 140 trays per acre. And you know what farmers feel? சேர்த்து வைங்கப்பா, அப்பதான் வந்து நல்லா இருக்கும் பார்க்கிறதுக்கு. To be honest, it's not going to help them at all. You can achieve better yields by just doing half of it and saving your cost. And this is like quite difficult for us to explain to farmers at this moment, because they feel like more you plant, more you get yield, which is not the case with rice. Rice is a beautiful crop that adjusts itself depending on population density, and the right population density can be achieved after effort what currently farmers are practicing. And this is the key to it. I told about like the root damage, வேர் அறுவர்த்து அதெல்லாம் சொன்னல. இது வந்து இதில் எதுவுமே இருக்காது. Quick establishment, faster establishment of the crop. And some of you, like Dr. Manivanan, has seen this live. Balamurugan is experiencing it as I speak. Better crop stand and increased tillers. And of course, productive tillers and more yield. Productive tillers, there can be lot of side shoots coming in rice, but those side shoots have to bear a panicle. If they don't bear a panicle, you're not going to get higher yield. So benefit of VGRO technology is it helps to improve productive tillers. And I've seen farmers with photos of showing like this big tiller at the end of the crop harvest. It would be nice to walk through the field after the machine has harvested to know exactly how many tillers were there, which is easy to count, and also grains per panicle. So these are benefits that we have seen, and that's what we kind of marketed a little bit, called as a Adiga Urpati, Adiga Magasul, Adiga Labam. In English, it's more production, more yield, more profit. So it's been syncing very well with farmers. Almost like 95% of the farmers, we have got easily 10 to 15% increase in yield by adopting VGRO technology. And this is quite important. Having uniform flowering and panicle emergence, uniform grain maturity, which means the grain at the top of the panicle and the grain at the bottom of the panicle are filled evenly and has the mass so that you get weight. And finally, a timely harvest. So if as it has to mature at the same time for everybody to get an harvest. So that's exactly where you get the timely harvest with VGRO. Now, how to enable small holdings? So we talked about VGRO. Previously, we talked about the macro picture and then what VGRO does and the opportunities that provide. And that's a farmer who has grown his nursery on top of a terrace. You see the parapet wall here. This is exactly the parapet wall of the farmer. And basically, he's a 2-acre farmer behind his household, and he raised his nursery on top. And you can see the quality of nursery, that mat that he's holding in. This crop is all set for a bumper crop. You can look at it and say, like, if the farmer doesn't screw up till the 100 days, applying right things at the right stage, he will be crossing 35 to 40 bags easily for this harvest. And that's the kind of start he is setting in. So what we introduced is primarily VGRO planting as a service. So using VGRO technology, you raise a community farm and you plant for yourself, your family and friends, or do it as a business in a local area. And it's quite lucrative. I will show you some numbers later, but that's exactly where the pitch is for micro entrepreneurs. I'm not going into the details of economics of the micro entrepreneurship, but we have scales ranging from 100 acres, somebody doing for them and their family, to 100 acres, to some people doing for 2,000, 3,000 acres across. And if you look at one thing, why this micro entrepreneurship, the peak demand for this activity is only 15 to 30 days per season. So if you're in a 3-season market, you have roughly around 90 to 120 days of work in a year. If you're in a 2-season market like Kanjivaram district or Puneri, you will have only 65 days of work in that area. So if you are planning for a huge capacity, you got to invest for the peak. Invest for the peak means you are depreciating all these assets and the resources for non-peak. So if a big company or a big corporate got to get involved, they have to put a lot of money and resources to meet the peak to be there. Whereas if you go through the micro entrepreneurship model, yeah, there are like 50 micro entrepreneurs there doing 100 acres each, and they are working at their pace and they are able to cater to a need. And that's more through a participatory local engagement. Their relationship and trust drives most of the business. We have a couple of people about 2,000 acres with us, but most of them are in the range of 100 to 500 acres. And I mentioned to you about 80 to 90 days work day a year, and they're providing an employment for 5 to 10%. This is not a hustle job. This is uh, a micro entrepreneurship opportunity in addition to their agriculture. Hustle jobs are like running for Ola or Uber for food delivery. This is investing a little bit of money while enabling productivity gains for the people around you. And the person who I had in the opening slide, it's only 30 days since he started, and his order book is almost full. And he's kind of like, expanding his nursery into another area within 30 days. So you can see what's the kind of demand there is. The picture which you see now is a nursery. You can see how simple is it to establish a VGRO nursery. That's an open field with a raised bed and a rain hose pipe inside it. There is a small locally customized tray that is helping them to set up the nursery. Okay, and there's a cedar on top. That's all you need, and 3 to 5 people locally, and they work from morning 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and it's done, and the nursery is ready. And then there are certain models, only nurseries which produce only seedling, nursery plus planting. They do have machines to plant for farmers and give it as a full service. So several models exist. And there is a low capital investment, and it's a very short lead time to establish a nursery like this. They don't have to worry about technology. Technology is coming from VGRO. The biggest cost is the trays and the machine for transplanting, and that's somewhere around 6 to 7 lakhs of investment. And if you're doing an 100 acre per season, 2 seasons, you're running a ROIC of return on invested capital at 55 to 60%. I would say I've been in seen different investment classes in different parts of the world. 55 to 60% ROIC in your backyard for the amount of time you spend in a year, it's a fantastic opportunity. And I showed you also the opportunity on the top. There's less than 5% is where the penetration today. There's still 95% up for grab. And it's not going to happen for a decade. I'll be honest on it. It's a long way before this can be fully mechanized. So that's the opportunity, and we are slowly building on organically. Our customers, we don't market, we don't push it hard. We want people to experience the product, feel the benefit, and most of our franchisee owners are who came to us as farmers. They came to us as farmers, they used it, and then they felt like, okay, I'll do it for my family. And then they started doing it to the neighbors. And with a 55 to 60% annual ROIC, I'm sure it's a very good proposition for 1 acre of a field than planting any other crop. So that's one of the biggest excitement that we have, the sensation around this place. And as I told you, the technology is very simplified. This picture will speak miles than me talking about it. You can see a lady who is a farm laborer who works in farms, daily wages, and it is as simple as that person can take this VGRO and deploy it in a field. Okay, all you need is the only thing capital intensive is this trays. These trays are quite intensive, and we do have a solution for that. We initially came with VGRO, all in a bag that helps you to know and ready to go. But then we realized that the tray cost a lot, with plastics going 40% up north in prices, thanks to COVID and all the reduced consumption of oil and etc. So there isn't much refining happening. So plastics are not available. It was a showstopper. We came up with a VGRO few use trays. So 5 to 6 users, a low entry barrier, 14 to 15 rupees per tray, and you can get started and keep moving on. So that's exactly what we brought in. So you get this to have a field, either your own field or a lease field. If you have a local community like Balamurgan was able to mobilize a significant amount of people across 2-3 districts in a short time through his contacts. And if you have that kind of connection, and you have some people to manage it, this is not a bad business at all. And this is where, we're kind of doing that. On the other hand, we are also going to agriculture colleges, the diplomas and bachelors in agriculture. I will show in a minute. So you can see a lot of entrepreneurs at different age groups and different backgrounds being developed. So the gentleman here is just finished diploma in agriculture, and we did a demonstration in his college last year. He took it back to his farm and convinced his parents to use it. And then after that, one day he turned up and said, "Sir, I wanted to start this business." I was like a bit worried how this person would take it along. But then, you know what? It's been like um, he is now doing 300 acres. I'm quite surprised, and I'm quite happy that he became an entrepreneur coming out of a diploma in agriculture. We helped them to set up, provide the technology, etc., etc. He did around 100 acres last season, and this year he's around 300 acres. On an average, a person makes 2000 rupees per acre. So you can look at the math for a 40-45 day activity and how much these people are earning. That's good. And on a farmer side, if you do go for manual planting, you will not be able to plant in the right time. You'll not get higher yield if you don't use vigor technology. And the cost of doing it is in upwards of 7,500, whereas a full service using VGRO is available for 6,000 to 6,500 per acre in the areas where you want. So you spend 1,000 rupees less or 1,500 rupees less. You don't have to do anything. It's like ordering in a Grab or a Ola or a Uber to get a food delivered, or Swiggy to get a food delivered. You order. You don't have to worry about whether a pig is running over your nursery in the night or not, whether the guy is turning and irrigating or not. These are all big centralized nurseries that we have helped to set up. And from there, they are providing this PASS as a service. And these people are all running full orders. Huh? I got to be honest. Many places they are not taking orders because they already above their capacity. Their order books are overflowing. So as I showed you, right now we have 4.5 million acres of planting of rice every year. Only 5% is mechanically transplanted. This scenario is going to continue for quite some time. I'll be very clear. This scenario is going to continue for for quite some time because there's huge demand. There is no quality supply that can address this. And we make a very marginal profit of selling that bag. Actually, if you look at the profits of what a transplanter makes and what we make, it should be in the order of 20x for them. So it's more like they got to benefit for the efforts they do. They're working hard in the front end, engaging farmers. We are committed to evolve this technology to, this is the version 1 of VGRO. We do have version 2 and version 3 in pipeline that's going to improve the lives of the transplanter or the planting as a service entrepreneur, as well as improving the yields to the next level to the farmers. And call for action. So I've been speaking so long. So here it starts with me. If you guys get excited, well, you should try it in your farm. It's going to be 1,000 rupees extra per acre. And if you get 5 bags extra, that's still a 4,000 rupees extra at current market prices for rice. Yeah, please feel free to pass it on to your family and friends. Most of it expansion is through that. Our initial stages of expansion for any of this franchisees, family and friends, like cousins and uncles and aunts helping to get the technology. And then eventually, the business graduates into a micro entrepreneurs and a small business. So that's the journey we have seen. And many places have 3 seasons a year. So we can see people evolving from I tried to I become an micro entrepreneur, and then they are at the cusp of moving into large scale mass planting, which is like kind of a small business. And we know some of the transplanters who are doing 1,500 acres. So 1,500 acres is roughly a 1 crore turnover in revenue, sir. You can imagine what is the scale of opportunity they are doing. And these people are very ordinary people. Very ordinary people means 8th standard or a 10th standard. They have experience in that area, or they have been slogging along in a lot. And VGRO has been providing a big boost to them to get on. We also get inquiries from people who want to invest. They have people who can work on it. So it's kind of like a deal 60-40, 70-30, whatever they work out. But we help to enable them with the technology and etc. And so if you, I will run a video before I close this, open up for question and answers. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, VGRO Official. You will see a lot of content coming up in the coming next 2-3 weeks. These are all community content. We don't choreograph that. It's all shot in the farmer field to bring in. That will give you latest updates on where VGRO is expanding. Please do follow us on Facebook. There's a hyperlink attached to this presentation. When it comes in, please feel free or search for VGRO in Facebook. You will land up in a VGRO page. Same is it with, there are several VGROs. There's a fintech company in VGRO in YouTube. So you got to scroll a little bit to find VGRO there. And I'll show you the pages and videos for you to get it done. And if you're interested for a franchisee or someone is interested for a franchisee and an inquiry, there is a Google form. One of the things with this large scale engagement is phones keep buzzing. So don't take me wrong. It's not that productive for us to engage people one after the other. So we have a Google form where if you express your interest, we arrange in smaller groups of 10 or 15 where we'll go detail into the numbers, what it takes to set it up, what are the challenges, and what are the opportunities, and what are the watch-outs. So that's something that we are keen to follow up after you express your